In a scene that defies all expectations, Shaquille O'Neal spots a hard-working black pregnant woman at a gas station, and the act he performs next is so shocking, it will leave you utterly breathless. The world went silent as Emily Carter's hand hovered over her phone. 3 missed calls from the hospital, 1 text message, "We need you here now." Outside, Dallas's rain pounded against her apartment window, mirroring the storm inside her. She hadn't seen Shaquille O'Neal in 8 years, not since that explosive night when everything changed. Now, according to the nurse who'd called earlier, he was asking for her. "Critical condition," she'd said. "He doesn't get to do this," Emily whispered to the empty room, her voice cracking. "Not now." She glanced at the half-packed suitcase on her bed. The culinary conference in New York, her first big break after years of struggle, started tomorrow. Her cooking demonstration could finally launch her career beyond the convenience. Store job that barely covered rent. Years of work leading to this moment. Her phone vibrated again. This time she answered. "Ms. Carter, it's Nurse Martinez from Memorial Medical Center. Mr. O'Neal's condition has deteriorated rapidly. The doctors don't think he'll make it through the night." Her voice softened. "He's been asking for you. Says he has something important to tell you." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the familiar, conflicted emotions bubbling up. "I'm supposed to be on a plane to New York in 3 hours." "I understand. I just thought you should know." As she hung up, Emily caught her reflection in the window. Exhausted eyes, worry lines etched deeper by years of single motherhood. 6-year-old Tyler and 4-year-old Olivia were sleeping in the next room, unaware of the turmoil their mother faced. Even 7 months pregnant, she couldn't escape the past that Shaq represented. She grabbed her keys. 30 minutes later, Emily stood in the hospital corridor, paralyzed outside room 342. Through the small window, she could see the diminished form of Shaquille O'Neal, once an imposing figure in her life, now shrunken beneath starched sheets, tethered to machines that beeped a countdown. A doctor brushed past, pausing when she noticed Emily's frozen stance. "Are you family?" she asked gently. Emily laughed bitterly. "Complicated." She studied Emily for a moment. "He doesn't have much time left. Whatever happened between you, this is your last chance." Emily pushed open the door, the antiseptic smell hitting her like a physical force. Shaq's eyes were closed, his breathing labored. The years had caught up with the basketball legend who'd once seemed invincible. The room felt too small, the walls closing in with every step. "Shaq," she said, the name foreign on her tongue after so many years. His eyes fluttered open, finding Emily's face with effort. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by something Emily hadn't seen from him before: relief. "You came," Shaq whispered, voice barely audible. He lifted a trembling hand. Emily didn't take it. Instead, she moved to the window, putting distance between them. "The nurse said you wanted to see me." "I need to tell you," Shaq began, each word a struggle. "About what happened after you left. About what I really did." Emily turned, ice flooding her veins. "Don't." But Shaq continued, his confession spilling out between labored breaths, the truth he'd guarded for years, why he'd really started the restaurant for her, and the lies he'd maintained that had driven a wedge between them. As the monitors began to wail, doctors rushed in, pushing Emily aside. She stood in the corner, watching them work frantically on the body of a man who was already going, taking with him a truth that would destroy everything Emily had ever believed about her success, her struggle, and herself. 8 years earlier, Emily Carter had stood behind the counter of a 24-hour gas station on the outskirts of Dallas, watching as her 2 small children played quietly in a corner of the store. Tyler, only 6, was coloring on a piece of cardboard he'd found, while 4-year-old Olivia dozed against her backpack. 7 months pregnant and exhausted, Emily fought to keep her eyes open during the graveyard shift. The neon lights flickered outside as a black SUV pulled into the station. Even before he stepped out, Emily recognized the unmistakable silhouette of Shaquille O'Neal. His massive frame ducked through the door as he entered, eyes sweeping across the small convenience store. Their gazes met, and Emily straightened her faded uniform, suddenly self-conscious. "Can I help you, sir?" Shaq studied her for a moment, then looked at the children. "Those your kids?" Emily nodded, defensive. "Yes. I don't have anyone to watch them at night." "And you work here? Every night?" His deep voice held no judgment, just curiosity. "I do what I have to," she replied, one hand instinctively moving to her pregnant belly. "Their father left when he found out about this one, said he wasn't ready for more responsibility." Something shifted in Shaq's expression. He moved closer to Tyler, crouching down. "What are you drawing there, little man?" Tyler looked up, momentarily starstruck by the giant before him. "A house, a big one with lots of rooms, for when we get rich." Shaq laughed gently. "That's a good dream to have." He turned back to Emily. "How about you? Any dreams besides the night shift?" The question caught her off guard. "I used to want to be a chef," she admitted. "Went to culinary school for a year before life happened." That night turned into the first of many visits. Shaq returned the next evening with groceries and supplies for her children. Within weeks, he'd connected Emily with his foundation that helped single parents. When she confessed her culinary aspirations, he arranged for her to complete her training. 6 months later, Emily stood in an empty storefront in downtown Dallas, staring in disbelief as Shaq handed her the keys. "I don't understand," she whispered. "It's yours," he said simply. "Your restaurant. My foundation will back you for the first year. After that, it's all on you." "Why are you doing this?" Emily asked, overwhelmed by the opportunity. Shaq's expression grew serious. "Because I can, and because talent shouldn't be wasted." Emily's restaurant, Carter's Kitchen, opened 3 months later to unexpected success. Her simple, heartfelt cooking resonated with locals, and within a year, she'd paid back Shaq's foundation and was turning a profit. Tyler and Olivia thrived in daycare, then school, growing up in the back office of the restaurant where they did homework, surrounded by the aromas of their mother's creations. For 2 years, Shaq remained a constant presence, stopping by the restaurant and checking on Emily and the children. Then came the night that changed everything, when Emily discovered the truth behind Shaq's generosity. It was after closing, and she'd found a folder mistakenly left behind in Shaq's coat. Inside were documents revealing that Carter's Kitchen wasn't just backed by his foundation. Shaq personally owned 75% of the business. Every decision she thought she'd made independently had been quietly guided, every earned success secretly subsidized. The confrontation had been explosive. "You lied to me," Emily had accused, throwing the papers at him. "You made me believe." "I was doing this on my own. I was trying to help," Shaq had defended. "You needed to believe in yourself. By creating a fake success story? By making me your charity project?" The betrayal had cut deep. "I thought I had earned this. I thought I was showing my kids what hard work can do." "You did earn it," Shaq insisted. "The food, the customers who come back, that's all you. But not the business, not the success." Emily's voice had broken. "You made me believe a lie." That night, Emily had demanded Shaq leave, from the restaurant and from their lives. He'd respected her wishes, transferring his ownership share to her name without conditions or fanfare. For 8 years, she'd run Carter's Kitchen without his shadow, expanding to a second location and finally achieving the success she'd once only dreamed of. Until tonight, when the hospital call had shattered the carefully constructed wall between past and present. After leaving Shaq's hospital room, Emily found herself wandering the sterile corridors, mind reeling from his confession. She'd left her children with her neighbor, telling them she had an emergency at the restaurant. Now she couldn't bring herself to return home, to pretend that her world hadn't just tilted on its axis. She found a quiet waiting area and sank into a chair, hands cradling her pregnant belly. What Shaq had revealed in his final moments went far beyond the deception she'd discovered 8 years ago. The truth was both simpler and more devastating than she'd imagined. Shaq hadn't helped, Her because of random chance or charitable impulse. He'd helped her because 25 years earlier, someone had done the same for his mother, a single parent working multiple jobs to support her children. His benefactor had remained anonymous, asking only that Shaq someday help another family, if he found success. "I was looking for someone to repay that debt," he'd told her, his voice fading. "When I saw you that night, with your kids, working so hard, I recognized my own story. But I went too far. I didn't just help, I controlled. I'm sorry, Emily." In his final moments, he'd revealed that after their falling out, he'd continued to watch over them from a distance. Anonymous college funds established for Tyler and Olivia. A food critic steered toward her restaurant during a crucial review. Period. Small interventions that had helped without controlling. "I couldn't stop caring," he'd whispered, before the machines started their urgent alarms. "But I learned to help without taking away your agency. Too late, maybe. But I learned." Now, as dawn broke through the hospital windows, Emily wiped away tears she hadn't realized she was shedding. Her phone buzzed with a message from the conference organizers, asking if she'd be making her flight. The culinary demonstration she'd worked so hard to secure was just hours away in New York. With trembling fingers, she typed a response. "Family emergency. I need to reschedule." The reply came almost immediately. "We understand. Let us know when you're ready." Emily drove home in silence, the weight of the night settling around her. When she entered the apartment, her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, was making breakfast for Tyler and Olivia. "Mama!" Olivia rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Emily's legs. "Are you okay? Your eyes are red." Emily knelt, gathering both children close. "Someone who used to be very important to us is very sick," she explained gently. "I had to go see him." Tyler's brow furrowed. "Who is it?" Emily hesitated. For 8 years, she'd erased Shaq from their narrative, removing photos and changing the subject whenever the children recalled fragments of memory from their early years. They had been too young to fully remember the giant who had once carried them on his shoulders. "His name is Shaquille," she said finally, "and a long time ago he helped us when we needed it most." That afternoon, after collecting framed photos from storage boxes she hadn't opened in years, Emily sat with her children on the living room floor. Together, they looked at images from the early days of Carter's kitchen, Shaq cutting the ribbon at the grand opening, Tyler perched on his massive shoulders, Olivia giggling as she sat in his enormous hands. "He's the biggest person I've ever seen," Tyler exclaimed, studying the photos. "He was even bigger in real life," Emily said softly, "and he had a big heart to match." "Will we get to meet him?" Olivia asked. Emily's throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. He passed away last night." The children absorbed this with the straightforward acceptance unique to the young. Tyler leaned against his mother. "Were you mad at him? Is that why we never talked about him?" The question pierced Emily's heart. "I was," she admitted. "He did something that hurt my feelings. But I think I understand now why he did it." "Did you forgive him?" Olivia asked, her small face serious. Emily considered the question, remembering Shaq's last words before the machines began their urgent wail. "I just wanted to see you fly." "I'm working on it," she told her daughter, honestly. 6 months later, Emily stood in the expanded kitchen of her flagship restaurant, supervising the prep for a special evening service. Her new baby daughter, Shauna, slept peacefully in a carrier on her back, undisturbed by the controlled chaos around her. The local news played on a small television in the corner, showing coverage of a charity gala in Shaq's honor. The Shaquille O'Neal Foundation had expanded significantly following his death, fueled by an outpouring of support and donations from across the country. "Mom?" Tyler called, rushing into the kitchen with an envelope. Now 7, he took his role as official mail opener very seriously. "This just came by special delivery." Emily wiped her hands, taking the thick cream envelope. Inside was an invitation to the Foundation's flagship event next month, and a personal note from Shaq's sister. "Emily, before my brother passed, he made me promise to reach out to you. He spoke of you often, always with respect and regret. The foundation is honoring 5 chefs who came from challenging backgrounds to achieve culinary success. Shaq insisted your name be among them, calling you the most authentic success story I've ever been privileged to witness. I understand there's history between you, but I hope you'll consider attending, not just to be honored, but to share your story with others who need to hear it. With respect. Aisha O'Neill. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she set down the invitation. Her sous chef glanced over curiously. "Everything okay, boss?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, I think it might be." That evening, after closing, Emily sat at a corner table in her empty restaurant. Tyler and Olivia had gone home with Mrs. Rodriguez, and baby Shauna slept peacefully in her carrier. The space around her, the gleaming kitchen visible through the pass window, the comfortable dining room filled with tables where thousands of customers had enjoyed her food, represented everything she'd worked for. For years, she'd believed the lie that her success was manufactured, that Shaq's intervention had robbed her of authentic achievement. His final confession had forced her to confront a more nuanced truth. Help and opportunity didn't diminish the work she'd put in or the talent she possessed. Emily picked up her phone and called the number on the invitation. "This is Emily Carter," she said when Aisha answered. "I'd be honored to attend the gala, but I'd like to make a proposal about my speech." 2 weeks later, Emily stood on a small stage at her restaurant, facing an audience of single parents gathered for the first workshop of the Carter O'Neill Culinary Initiative. Funded jointly by her restaurants and the Shaquille O'Neill Foundation, the program would provide culinary training and business mentorship to parents struggling to build careers while raising children alone. 8 years ago, Emily began. I was working the night shift at a gas station with my 2 small children sleeping in the corner. I was exhausted, 7 months pregnant, and convinced that my dreams were permanently out of reach. She glanced at Tyler and Olivia, seated proudly in the front row. Then someone saw potential in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself. He offered help that I didn't know how to accept gracefully. The path wasn't smooth. We both made mistakes. But standing here today, I understand something crucial about success. It's rarely achieved alone. Emily moved her gaze across the hopeful faces before her. This program isn't about creating dependency or manufacturing success stories. It's about giving talented people the runway they need to take flight on their own. It's about acknowledging that needing help doesn't diminish your achievements. It's part of the human experience. As she continued speaking, Emily felt a sense of completion, of a circle finally closing. The restaurant around her, once a source of conflicted feelings, now represented something greater than personal success. It had become a bridge between her past struggles and future possibilities, not just for herself but for others. Later that night, after the participants had left with their welcome packets and schedules, Emily sat alone at the bar, a glass of sparkling water in hand. She took out the photograph of Shaq and her children that she now kept in her wallet. The edges were worn, but the image remained clear, a frozen moment of joy before complications arose. "I forgive you," she whispered to the image, "and thank you." As she gathered her things to head home, Emily passed the framed motto she'd hung by the door when she first opened, words that had taken on new meaning in recent months. "Where the broken parts shine, that's where the light gets in."